So when people hear the word trauma, they often think of something catastrophic and they don't want to talk about it. So trauma is not a bad word, and trauma is on a spectrum. And yes, of course, sometimes trauma can be obvious and big, but there are subtler forms of trauma as well. And today we're going to talk about how trauma impacts your emotional eating. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I really love to talk about trauma, but most of the world, this is a very scary word. And I want to demystify it for you today, because if we're not looking in this direction to help with your emotional eating, we are not doing your pattern justice. If you can really understand what trauma is, it's going to help you see that you're not damaged, that you are actually quite intelligent and you learned a way to adapt to your situations, to your environment. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about what trauma is. Trauma is on a spectrum, and it really is how we interacted with an event in our lives, how we processed it. If we went through a situation, so I could have gone through a situation and you could have gone through the same situation, and you could have left it feeling fine and I could have left it feeling traumatized because I wasn't able to process it, to resolve it, to move through the emotional waves of it, but you were. And that's the difference. Trauma is subjective to us and to our bodies. So we can see trauma as a big T traumas. And that's usually when the word trauma is used. That's what we think of. We think of, a car accident. There's a death in the family. There could have been abuse, like very severe abuse. And those are big T traumas. And small T traumas are things that we might not think about as trauma. So we might live in a household with repeated criticism, body shaming, emotional dismissal, saying like, toughen up, be more positive, feeling unseen, feeling this pressure to be better, to perform, to be perfect. So the women I work with, they're not typically walking around with big T trauma. Yes, some of my clients do have big T trauma, but what happens when we do the deeper work is that these smaller T traumas are the ones running the show. And even my clients with the big T traumas, this is happening. The small T traumas are sort of accumulating to get to these big T traumas. So if you don't feel like you're seen or heard, or you can go to a parent or caregiver about how you're feeling and something is happening to you more on the big T trauma spectrum, you're not going to have someone safe to talk to about it. And so it compounds. They're not isolated. But majority of the time when I'm working with clients, and this is why trauma can be such maybe a triggering word, we're working with these smaller T traumas because they're the foundation. So what is the connection between trauma and emotional eating? So if you think about it this way, when we are very young, our nervous system is developing and we need to co-regulate with our parents or caregiver. That's just a fancy way that we need a really calm, nurturing parent to hold the space for their nervous system to help our nervous system feel calmer. When we don't have that, maybe we're shamed, our parents are anxious or they're dismissive, our nervous system can't calm itself on its own. We need that from our parents. We are very much developmentally, we can't do that for ourselves. And so if our parents or caregivers can't help us move through this discomfort by holding that calm space, helping us to calm down, helping us to process what we experienced, whatever emotion came up, and to make sense of it cognitively, we're left with the discomfort of emotions in our body. Every emotion starts off as a sensation in our body. As children, we're not like, that person hit me, that equals I feel sad. We feel it in our body. We feel the agitation in our body. We feel these as sensations. That's why it's a nervous system issue. And so when we don't have that from our parents or caregivers, our nervous system doesn't like to be in an activated state. It wants to get back to homeostasis. It wants to get back to calm. We don't need to live at calm all the time. Of course, our emotions are giving us information, so our nervous system's going to fluctuate. But the middle ground is being calm. And when we are agitated and holding in emotions and we can't process them, so the nervous system can't go back to calm because we don't have that from parents or caregivers, we have to find a way to help us feel that calm or to feel more pleasure, more soothing in our body. And food is something that's very accessible. So food can be connected to love. As a baby, we're very close to our mothers, we're breastfed. Food physiologically, biochemically gives us a dopamine rush, especially sugary foods. It's pleasurable. And so our brain at that age says, oh, when I eat this, I feel a little bit better. So our brain learns this pattern of going to food. And so that becomes something we can rely on to help us soothe and calm our nervous system. And when we have these uncomfortable emotions that our parents or caregivers can't help us move through, that's what creates trauma. Trauma means we are holding in these unresolved emotions. We couldn't process that event. We couldn't move through the sadness or the hurt or the shame and get back to a calm state. And when we use food as a band-aid, that's not actually meeting that need. That's not what our nervous system needs. It's a substitute, and substitutes are not doing the job of meeting your true needs. And so food can give us, for that moment, the soothing, the grounding, the distracting, the numbing, so we're not feeling the intensity of the emotion. And so it's not something random, it's adaptive. And we do this with other things in our lives too. You know, as we get older, it might be shopping, it might be scrolling on Instagram. Food here is holding that place of soothing and calming us in this situation. So just to sum it up, emotional eating really is the way the body is trying to regulate itself, get back to calm. You know, it doesn't mean it needs to live there forever and you just need to get back to calm by whatever means necessary. It's that those deeper needs weren't met to process through that event to get you to resolution. And so this brings me to when your emotional eating is triggered, it's pointing to something unresolved in you. And that's why trauma is not a scary word, because your emotional eating is tied to some level of trauma when it's true emotional eating. And so when we do the deeper work, it's not about reliving everything. It's actually giving you the tools to become that parent, that caregiver you didn't have, and to teach your nervous system how to do that for you. And that might mean going back to these earlier memories to process them, but it's not done in a way to re-traumatize you. When you're re-traumatized by looking at things that happened to you in the past, it means you're not well resourced, you don't feel grounded, and you're not doing it in a safe way. And that's what you need to do to really process trauma, whether it's on the spectrum. You have to be grounded and resourced in your body somatically to move through it. And your body is so intelligent, it's only going to give you the amount of that experience that you can handle. And over time, you develop more and more capacity to hold that. And that means that whenever these triggers pop up, it's gonna lessen and lessen over time. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, when they're working with me, I'm holding that space for them. So these situations, this processing, it goes, for a lack of a better word, faster, because they feel safer, they feel more resourced, and they have that container to move through it versus just trying to do it on their own. And that is giving you an experience that you didn't have growing up. You're actually giving yourself an experience, a modeling in your nervous system to help you move through this. And so that is the role I'm playing for clients, and helping them develop that for themselves internally so that they can do this, but also have guidance and support so that they can move through this, because you don't have to white knuckle it and try to willpower your way out of it. It's when you do that, you're actually not being compassionate with yourself. And so it's not like you're going hunting for trauma. You're not trying to talk about all your childhood wounding or all of the things you could remember. Most of the time when I'm working with clients and we find those triggers, because we're looking specifically at emotional eating, we're working with that specific trigger. And it's usually not what they thought it would be. It's usually a little bit different. So what they've talked about in therapy, it might not be the same root. It's different because your body is holding the truth. And when you're in talk therapy, your mind is trying to figure out your experience and truth, but your body felt the experience. So why not go straight to the source? So here's what comes up. I'm going to give you a few examples of different events that have come up for clients as we're doing this work. And this is really powerful work. And, it could go back to, usually it's earlier in childhood. Sometimes there are clients being criticized of their body, or maybe they're experiencing something and they didn't get the witnessing they wanted. So they were getting a certain message from their parents, but them as a child, their experience was different. And so they had to keep in those emotions because no one was attuning to them, listening to them, hearing them. I've had clients go back to being in utero and feeling the emotions and sensations of their mother, not feeling wanted, not feeling supported. That is embedded in our bodies. We are feeling what our mothers are going through. I've had clients who were told that parents' mindset around them being born, they didn't want them to, they didn't want to have another child. Maybe it was later on in their life. Clients who just feel like, they were scolded at school, or they were criticized at school by a teacher. So these are the situations that are happening, and they're very powerful when we get to the root. It helps you to really see, not even see cognitively, to feel in your body what is missing and to really resolve it at that root level, so it processes at a body level to regulate your nervous system, to get back to calm. And this cannot be filled by food. You wouldn't go in utero and feed your little embryo self, a donut and say, that meets your needs. It's something deeper. It's about really moving through the emotions experienced at that level. But these traumas shape how you view yourself. So you're going to walk away feeling, you're going to carry these wounds of not feeling wanted, feeling like you're not good enough, you're not accepted, and that makes you feel shame. And then if you can't move through that, because of course, as a child, you're not cognitively aware of that, you're going to food to help your nervous system, because your parents, if they're not attuned enough to track that back, it's going to be hard for them to support you. Maybe they were loving, maybe they were trying their best, but it wasn't enough to help you move through at this deeper level. And that's the missing piece, because as an adult, we can see our parents gave us food and a house, and they were taking us on vacations and maybe saying, I love you. But as a child, our experience was very different, and we need to honor that and move through that. Otherwise, we're still searching for something to fill that void, and food becomes that thing we latch onto. And so how do we move through this? I touched upon it a little bit, but when I'm working with clients, there are other layers to this. There's true nourishment and body acceptance, but when we're really working at the core layer of emotional eating, we're learning how to feel safe in the body, resourced, so that we can move through the deeper roots of this pattern. And we're doing it, like I said, the body's very intelligent. We are doing it in a way where the body feels safe. And usually when you're working with someone, you can go a bit further because you have their nervous system holding you in that process. And so when I'm doing one-to-one sessions with clients, I find we can get to that deeper root more quickly and really shift the pattern in 1 or 2 sessions. And they're also doing their own work with the guided meditations that I give to them in the program as well, building up their capacity. So instead, this process is not about what you think the story is. It's really about coming from the body, like I said. So what you think your emotional eating story is can be very different to what it is in the body. It might match, but most of the time it doesn't. And we have to go back, and we are feeling the sensations, acknowledging the emotions, moving through them on a body level, And it's really amazing to watch your body shift, go from, feeling tight and agitated to at peace and ease in a session. So we can see that happen. And this is how we start resolving emotional eating at the root. So emotional eating is not proof that you're broken or something is wrong with you. It actually is proof that you're very intelligent and you learned an adaptive strategy to meet your needs. But of course, it is falling short at this point in your life because it's no longer helpful. It's becoming a bit harmful. And so trauma is on a spectrum and there are levels to healing. That's why this journey is a journey. It's not a one session and you're fixed. If you have that mindset, you're going to stay stuck in your pattern. So if you've been afraid to explore this aspect of your emotional eating journey because it feels scary or, oh my God, I don't want to go back there. It doesn't have to be that way. It's a very gentle and soft approach. And I actually really love the fact that we can put a name to what this is. It gives us awareness, which is the first step to dive deeper into this pattern and actually use the tools that are going to support us in resolving this. And so this is the work I do inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program with clients. We do this through a step-by-step process. They're learning these skills themselves. We work on this in one-to-one somatic sessions. There's lots of guidance and support, and this is to help them move through their emotional eating so that they can get to ease and peace and confidence around food and in their body in a sustainable way for years to come. And so if you're interested in the program, I will put the link below, but as a first step, you can also grab my guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? In this guide, it's going to help you start discerning truth from emotional hunger and catching your triggers, which is the first step I give to all of my clients. So you can find that free guide below. If you have any questions about what I've shared today, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.